Una Marson, born in 1905, was a Jamaican playwright, poet, journalist, performer and campaigner. The items here are taken from Senate House Library's modern book and periodicals collections and depict aspects of Una Marson's life during the two periods she lived and worked in London during the 1930s and 1940s. During Marson's first period residing in London in the 1930s, she lived in the Peckham home of Dr. Harold Moody, who had recently founded the League of Coloured Peoples, with the quoted purpose of stating the cause of the black man. In July 1933, the League published the first issue of its journal, The Keys, which is held in a reprint collection at Senate House Library. Una Marson is present from the first issue, which not only contains her poetry, but lists her as the journal's publicity secretary and editor. Just 3 pages into this first issue, Marson can be seen in the front row of a photograph taken at the League's first weekend conference. Marson's name appears numerous times throughout the first 2 years of The Keys, suggesting she was heavily involved in the League's activities. These are just a few examples which reflect her intellectual energy and political and creative ideas. During a reception for the West Indies cricket team, they were welcomed in verse by Miss Una M. Marson. Una Marson also organised and performed at a concert at the Indian Students' Hostel, while her play At What a Price, the first to be written and performed in London by a black creative team, was performed at the Scala Theatre. In addition to her work with the League's own committees, Una Marson also attended the British Commonwealth League Conference, where she recounted evidence of the unofficial colour bar in the UK and described this painful, subtle prejudice. It is important to note that by the second issue of Volume 2, published in late 1934, Marson has moved into the role of associate editor, and by the next issue is listed as full editor, although it was not long after this, in 1936, when she left London. In Jamaica in 1937, Una Marson self-published a book of poetry called The Moth and the Star, which was printed by the Gleaner newspaper. The poems are in themed sections, with the first focusing on Marson's recent time in London. Poems such as Little Brown Girl explore her sense of alienation living in a white city, while Quashie Comes to London, written in a form of Jamaican dialect, depicts a young Jamaican man, new in London, enjoying the sights but also feeling homesick. Senate House Library is one of only 5 UK libraries listed as having a copy of this book. In 1939, Una Marson gave a talk which was printed in the BBC's weekly magazine The Listener. The speech, retitled The Story of Jamaica, is one of a collection of essays on the theme of the world of yesterday and today, and is accompanied by a pencil sketch of the author. Una Marson's text is a synopsis of Jamaica's past and present and includes commentary on race and class, and she also describes how at school she was taught nothing about my own island. Since then I've tried to learn all I could about it, a learning which would take many forms, including the programme she was soon to broadcast via the BBC network. Between 1941 and 1946, Marson was employed by the BBC, as can be glimpsed in a 1943 issue of The Picture Post, a UK photojournalism magazine. Amidst articles on the Second World War and numerous adverts, Una Marson features in a photo article entitled At the BBC Canteen, where readers will see the faces behind some of the most famous voices in Britain today. Despite the patronising caption, all the women in the feature are referred to as girls, this image captures Marson at a time when she was at the height of her influence within the organisation, as head of the West Indies service and creator of the programme Caribbean Voices, where she worked for 3 years. This programme's aim was to broadcast writing from the Caribbean, and over its 15-year history, it transmitted works by writers such as Samuel Selvon, Andrew Salkey and Derek Walcott. These are just a few of the items held at Senate House Library within our Caribbean collections. We hope you'll come and visit the library and explore them yourselves.